Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'm very happy to be reading with Paul Hunter and Frank Rosini. I'm Rodger Moody. I'm going to read first. I'm the founding editor of Simplicity Review Press. I'm a poet. I'm a warehouse worker. I'm a laborer. I have a couple of announcements. Next Saturday, January 26th at 4 p.m., the annual William Stafford celebration with special guest John Daniel. He'll be talking about Stafford's use of nature in his writing and reading from his new book, Of Earth. And there'll be an open mic reading of favorite Stafford poems and or poems of your own that in some way relate to Stafford or his writing. It's hard to read this way. Okay. Can you hear me fine? Yes. Thank you. So I'm going to start out with a recent short poem. The title's the first line. It's one word. Restraint is eating cold brown rice with yellow onions, steamed 2 days ago and left in the refrigerator. The days are a distillation, cut and sift, cut and sift. Old pain, a kind of friend drawing breath down to the backside of my sweet lungs. I think I'll read one poem from my book, my little pamphlet that just came back from the printer yesterday. It's called Bloom and Bloom and Bloom. It's from a press that I'm saying my sons have started. And actually, it's self-publishing. My son did name the press, my youngest son, Jules, Sight for Sight Books. The poem, it's an old poem. He selected the poems in this collection. It's called Birds, Small Children, and it's for Provincetown, Massachusetts, 1987. I want to walk the harbor at dusk, to follow the curve of land with my eye, and remember the long drive from Oregon, and how the days fall away, the way light spills out of a dream, or a boy tags along behind a Veterans Day parade, guns and flags held high, violating the blue sky of birds, small children. I long for the Atlantic. It reminds me of how big the world is, of how I struggle to fit into it. Death and water are related, bonded by the invisible dimension of time, water seeking out its own level with boundless ease. Water, death, me, you, all of us bonded and circling down, the future told in a dust cloud long ago, a wisp of condensation hovering over the primordial ground, setting the tenor of your final moment. Water, destiny, a last glimpse of the circle of fire. Minutes tick off, water through a sieve, rushing against the infinite, the threat of unrecorded time, the inconsolable passage, growth and decay. Now the past unravels beside the invention of daily quotas and the 40-hour work week. Madness as dangerous as snipping the baby's umbilical cord too soon. Bradford and Commercial Street run north to the Atlantic, asphalt drawn to white caps and blue sky. The story of a boy and the smell of salt water, Land's End. I recently, well, just 2 weeks ago, I had an acceptance for a chapbook from a press in Treadwell, New York, Bright Hill Press. They're going to publish a chapbook by June. And I'm going to read, it's a long poem. It's called Self-Portrait, 16 Seven-Wings. Now, they're short sections. The poems are short, 7 lines. So this won't take too long. I know when someone says they're going to read a long poem, I sometimes cringe. but this will be somewhat painless. And for the 7-wing, I'm not going to read the titles. The titles in the 7-wing format, it's kind of an informal form based on a single stanza poem that Anna Akhmatova wrote. A poet, a Scottish poet, I think his last name is Ludlam, Robert Ludlam, decided he can make a form out of this, out of the energy in this poem, and that it would be 2 3-line stanzas, both of which have a list of 3 items that either work against each other or are compatible with one another. And the final single-line stanza is a summation that you can be as tame or wild with about it as you can, is my take on it. So I won't read the titles because they're not actually titled. It's just 7-wing and then in parentheses the first 3 or 4 words. That's the format. Anyway, so I'll start. And again, it's Self-Portrait, 16 7-wings. He longed for 3 things about farm life: the morning rooster, good compost in the garden, corn cobs glowing in the fireplace. He had no use for strangers selling Bibles, children who refused to weed the garden, well-meaning neighbors. The countryside belongs to the swallows. He lived for 3 things: work gloves, sun in the morning, the deep blue Midwest sky. He didn't care for outsiders, stiff prairie winds, a woman's cold coffee. He practiced how to talk while plowing flat fields. He read magazines in the back of study hall, daydreamed of piloting jetliners to far-off destinations, longed to kiss the only lawyer in town's daughter. A buddy parked a white Pontiac convertible with a cracked block in his driveway. The Chesterfields were his idea. The open road, another thing altogether. Someone has the missing pages of the family dictionary. The rub is to see where you are looking, not lifting the veil or plucking invisible strings that connect everything. He disliked the easily led, the 2-faced middleman, the first hint of liver spots. Everything, he said, turns to shit. So most of these are about some kind of labor that I've done in my adult or even teenage years, like farm labor or steel mill work and warehouse work that I do now. And some are to sit in the Midwest a little. And sometimes I try to be funny. That's hard to do. That's why everyone's laughing, because to be funny is really hard to do. I can be serious, I can be much too serious, but I want to be funny, and I have a hard time doing that. Anyway, 3 things he loved about Pi Day. Stories about parties in other countries, word games with numbers as answers. Pi. He hated to learn of the mind's infinite potential, mayhem as natural as water, endless memorization with no pie to eat, math and barking ravens all around us. See, even when I try to be funny, I'm dark. I think it might be a Midwestern thing, I don't know. I've been out here since '74. I feel like a Northwesterner. I identify with the Northwest, but anyway. What of all the dreary years slogging the warehouse floor, the patchy plywood, the computer, and the withholding technician? The tender girl who stalks the reach-in cooler, her songs and libidinous dance when we are alone, the existential disconnect. Chet Baker on the radio, softly following a sad song. A welder, toothless men wearing goggles, work handheld grinders beside his tired shack, the night darkening like the line foreman. Outside, the Milky Way full of twinkling energy, his father's brother wants to know if anyone bothers him. The company shower's cold, dirty. He drives the back road home with the radio off. Dad loved just 3 things: bowling, long hours at the steel mill, and how the windshield wipers of his old truck shook. He had no use for neighbors, vacations, or the nuances of political talk. No one ever saw him with a chocolate bar. He could be joyless. He had a hard life, though, so I shouldn't, be too mean to him in some of the things I write about him. You're right. A boy had 3 dreams: snow, his own room, a father he could talk to. But there was only the long walk to school, cold cereal every morning, a mother who lived in the past. No one will love you, she said. The cinder block warehouse dark, a semi idles hard down the rutted alleyway. The walk-in freezer ceiling drips. The sliding door is off its track. A muffin has been left too long in the toaster oven, and the boss is forgetful. He slips back under the water now. As a boy, he wanted just 3 things: a lower basketball hoop, long underwear, to see Lake Michigan. He roamed the erosion gullies of the gravel pit behind his grandparents' farm, hated water and his grandfather's gruff voice. Somehow, he was never tall enough. The cul-de-sac is on a hill. Our house is a duplex. North of town, the Coburg Hills, shrouded in fog. The high ceiling of the living room, the balcony of the loft, bring to mind tall trees, delirious in sun and wind. The quiet street is almost sad. He wished for 3 signs: the green light, a dog chasing its tail, photos of nudes. He disliked coy girls, wet hair in the workplace, a woman with a point of view. He couldn't understand the unmade bed. He shrugged off 3 things about boot camp: the small lies, the big lies, subtle psychological manipulation. He hated stories others told about girls back home, marching, orders for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Thoughts belong to no one. Just 2 more. The The dirty warehouse is cold this morning. He's wet from the rainy bike ride against traffic. He wants breakfast. Shrink-wrapped pallets hug the wall against the alleyway. He hates counting returns, the hand truck's unfailing flat tire. He remembers the job wasn't to last. That's how I felt when I first got warehouse work at Sundance. And now I'm a few days short of 28 years of working there. So anyway, that's what happens to some of us, to me. He parked in his easy chair for the evening after work. The gritty steel mill and cigars he only chewed languished on the other side of the river. Morning, the street dark, he drove the narrow back road toward smokestacks. He oogled the silent blue sky, swilled coffee. His tired pickup held the winding road. Let's read a couple of poems next that earlier this year appeared in the local magazine Cloud Bank. It's a poem from my mother. Echoes from my mother. I'm still mulling over the day she coaxed my brother, then only 5, back out into the street. She had shown him how to double a belt so the buckle could dangle. Was it just to get even with a boy who had slapped him when he wasn't looking? She had been fathered during the Great Depression by a man who drove through small towns, offering girls money to ride with him. Often locked in a closed closet as a child, she now whispers in my ear as I sleep. You know, I said my dad had a hard life, so did my mother. Yeah, I'm being probably too serious. Falling water. After school, I'd walk the abandoned quarry trail and emerge from dark woods to the roar of falling water collecting in a shallow pond rumored to have undercurrents that could pull a boy below the water's still surface. The railroad tracks slice the little town into 2 parts. The bed springs in the next room sing each night. Okay. This one's called Little League. I lost one summer waiting for a white ball to drop out of infield lights. When Billy walked up to bat, Coach waved the outfield back into the dark. I fell into the uncut grass and lay there, listening to my own breath. The boy called out my name. I couldn't even find my voice. The minutes felt flat as a slow inning. Then I stood in the tunnel of gray lights, Coach yelling, and waving me, or the thought of me, into the dugout. I hated right field. I was a little kid. I hated being stuck out in right field. Nothing ever happens. Just wanted some attention, I think. How am I on time? You know what time it is? Again in a quarter after? Okay, that's good. Thanks. This poem is about my job at Sundance, in part. The next 2. Yeah. Anyway, first line is also the title. When I walk the path I've worn between the warehouse and the store, my past and future collide like a bad carnival ride. My hand truck is heavy with regret, lost hours, days sprinkled with the dark foot of micromanagement. I watch the cashiers who are talking again, talking and asking customers if they're enjoying their day. One of the younger cashiers wears an illegal shirt. Her beautiful armpits are revealed in all their tender glory. I can hear a delivery truck rumbling down the scarred gravel alleyway. I try to think of labor as a kind of workout. Meanwhile, the truck driver is grousing about routing again. The general manager complains about payroll. New workers are sluggish, awash in the hurry of barely enough. Barely enough money, you know, hourly wage is low. This one's called Stalker. It's also based on my day job. Stalker. I'm too tired to sleep as the long day of lifting boxes bleeds into the shank of the evening. All day I have pushed a loaded dolly down the broken alley. I have answered the phone and used my neutral voice, almost kind, to tell strangers if we have one thing or another on the shelves. My hands are dirty, dust and boxes covered with forklift exhaust lean against the east wall of the cinder block warehouse. The wooden floor sags. The makeshift shelves have exposed nails. The sunlight covered with mold, the skylight covered with mold. I haven't whacked either elbow on a door frame in memory, and the radio almost always blares blues or jazz or sad news of the world collapsing or healing or blending cultures or someone telling a story or another person saying the truth to power or someone finding a way to love the moment. I want to read two more poems. And one from, it's an old poem. It's from my father. Bloom and bloom and bloom. I picked wildflowers at a rest park in Wyoming, tied them to the rearview mirror to remind myself where I've been. Truckers roared past me in the dead of night. I practiced courtesy, dimming my lights, slowing so they'd know I wanted them to pass. The radio wouldn't play in the Rockies, so I drove with the vents open and the windows down into Nebraska. I drove for hours without saying a word, slept without dreaming. In the morning, farms in Iowa and Illinois were a blur, but that night I saw him, Dad, shirtless and dim porch light, holding the screen door open, welcoming me after 10 long years with a look. He's thin now, thinner than I'd imagined. 2 lines sweep across his barrel chest. There's a third along the base of his neck where a doctor, a stranger to me, has done his work. But there in the doorway, Dad's eyes glowed. They glowed wild and calm at once, their light dissolving the years and the distances I put between us, dissolving the war and the miles of interstate and mountains and prairie. The flowers along the interstate bloom and bloom and bloom as if out of their own ashes or their own forgotten past that will not die. So the last poem I'm going to read is an old poem. I graduated from the MFA program here at U of O in '78, and this is the first, to me oddly enough, it's the first poem in my thesis. And in the manuscript I've been sending around the last couple of years, it's the last poem. And Paul has graciously made a broadside, a letterpress broadside on very nice paper that we have here of the poem. It's called Simple Language. Clouds hide the deep blue, the little-known river that trails us all. I tried to connect the stars to the gestures. We are trapped, but this we know, or should. When it rains, it is the ghosts of our parents crying because their loving tongues can no longer warn us that the days, dim or bright, are the days. Thank you.